Hi, welcome to your first video for 8th grade Georgia history. The first unit is on connecting the themes and enduring understandings. These are the big picture descriptions of what we're going to be studying throughout the year. A couple things to help you frame what we're going to talk about. What are the enduring themes? How do we use those themes or concepts when we study Georgia studies, and how do they relate to our everyday lives? These are the discussion questions that we talked about in class today. All right, the first of our themes is conflict and change. When there's conflict between or within societies, change is the result. Here are a couple of ways for you to think about conflict and change. How would conflict among family members result in change? Why did the government of Iraq change in the last few years? Those are examples of conflict leading to change. Second, distribution of power. Distribution of power in government is the product of existing documents and laws combined with contemporary values and beliefs. For instance, how is the power divided in your family? How is the power structure at St. Luke? Why is it set up the way it is? There are usually documents that show who has power. St. Luke School has something like that. You may not have a written document in your family, but it's pretty easy to tell where power is, who's making the decisions. Governance. As a society increases in complexity and interacts with other societies, the complexity of the government also increases. That makes sense. How do rules change in sports when you're young all the way up to professional sports? They do change. How might rules, responsibilities, and expectations change when there's a change in your family? If your family gets more complicated, like a new sibling, divorce, grandparent moving in, does that change how things work? I'm sure that it does. Next, the idea that individuals, groups, and institutions affect society through intended and unintended consequences. Here are a couple of ways to think about it. How would the actions of a few students bring consequences for the entire class? What decisions have you made in your life that have had intended or unintended consequences? Individuals, groups, and institutions, schools, countries, governments, all of those, the actions of those affect the rest of society. Location is one of our themes in Georgia history. A place's location affects the society's economy, culture, and development. For instance, how do your activities change depending on where you go on vacation? Do you do the same kinds of things in the mountains that you do at the beach? Well, part of the difference is location. What are some differences between city and country? Are there any? How does Columbus's location on the Chattahoochee River affect the economy? Movement and migration is a major theme in what we're going to talk about this year. The movement or migration of people and ideas affect all the societies involved. It affects the area where the people are moving from and where they're moving to. What impact, for instance, do you have on your community? How does a class change when somebody new comes in? What happened to Native Americans in Georgia when the Europeans arrived? Huge changes. This is an economic theme: production, distribution, and consumption. The production, distribution, and consumption of goods and services produced by the society are affected by the location, customs, beliefs, and the laws. Here's a way to think about it. What are some of the products produced in our area? And when it comes to distribution, how are these products distributed to other areas? The rule of law. In a democracy, rule of law influences the behavior of citizens, establishes procedures for making policies, and limits the power of government. For instance, what prevents teachers or police from abusing their power? Why should or shouldn't you have all laws written down in an official document? We'll talk about these things tomorrow. Technological innovation. Those innovations have consequences intended and unintended. Think about it this way. How has access to the internet both benefited and harmed schools? What technological innovations have impacted the way you are taught and the way you study? Okay, take a look at this. I'm not going to read it to you, but here are the directions for your homework. I assigned you one of the 9 themes. Follow these directions and be prepared tomorrow to share your news article and how it relates to the theme that I assigned to you.